Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnanajanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Gurudev, everybody. Happy Gaura Purnima and Holi. So today we will be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 5, Verse 32. Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sango Pangashtra Parsadam Yagne Sankirtana Prayer Yajantihi Sumedasaha. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of the Lord, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. So, this verse is often referred to by Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas throughout the times, from Chaitanya's own disciples all the way to more modern acharyas such as Srila Prabhupada, to suggest the predicted, prophesized incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because of course it says in the age of Kali, so Kali Yuga, they will do Sankirtana, congregational chanting, and the Lord will be constantly singing the names of Krishna, and although he is not of the same complexion as Krishna, he is Krishna himself, and he is accompanied by his associates, his servants, etc., his companions. And you see, I love this because to me this has always been, sure, we can talk about this in reference to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I have no issue with that. But for me, it has always applied as equally to Guruji. And this is what I would like to focus on today, the notion of the similarities and the comparisons that can be drawn between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Guruji. And in many ways, the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and what he accomplished and how his teaching and mission has developed since is something that helps shed light on Guruji and his life and his mission and how he conducts himself. And so for me, the most special place that Mahaprabhu and his entire Leela holds in my heart is that. It's the place it holds as a quote-unquote reference for the life that I'm currently witnessing of the Supreme Lord incarnated as Guruji, Paramahamsa Vishwananda. And so I want to draw upon some of those comparisons, some of those points that I have mentioned that I find to be borderline identical. So firstly, look at it from this perspective. He was born, he says from his childhood, a great attraction towards, the divine and the holy names and devotional activities and much like we hear about Guruji when we hear from his parents and childhood associates and friends. And then eventually it is said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was more of a scholar. He had a scholarly inclination. He followed this particular path and he was studying, and he eventually had a change of heart. And what I mean by change of heart is that he became more of a bhakta, less so of a scholar. And this was noticed by the Vaishnavas around him at the time, this transition. And they, of course, started to gravitate to him more after that. And why I cite this as a comparison to Guruji is not that Guruji was ever particularly scholarly, but Guruji has had these so-called changes of heart also, where originally he seemed to be more preaching in a particular manner, dabbling in certain traditions and certain elements of Hinduism, associating with certain, personalities in the spiritual field. And then suddenly Guruji has what appears to be a change of heart, and he becomes Acharya. He focuses much more on a strict Vaishnava theology and philosophy. And these changes are often cited by people as saying, well, How can that be? If one knows the truth, if one is the divine, how can one dabble in things and change one's mode of expression and teachings and blah, 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 blah. Well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did it too. And I can leave it there in the sense that I think it's up to you to understand why that is done and why the Lord chooses to showcase certain things. And my proposal as to why that is, why I think that happens, is because you have to understand the purpose of the incarnation. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was God acting the role of a devotee, a seeker, and so therefore he is seeking, and then eventually finds, and then sticks to that strictly. So that should be understood and emulated by devotees who are themselves seeking. They have a reference point for that. So Guruji, similarly, Guruji is the Lord himself incarnated, and he acts out also the role of a devotee / guru. And so he also has his behaviors that he chooses to undertake as a means of example setting, of relatability, of connection, whatever you wish to look at it. But there's another similarity that I wanted to point out. And then, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu starts to gather his disciples, once as I said, he changes and becomes more of a bhakta, and he starts to gather his disciples. Lord Nityananda comes to him, who is the incarnation of Adishesha, Advaitacharya, Gadadhara Pandit, Srivasacharya. These are his major companions, his main companions. And as the verse of the Bhagavatam says, that the Lord in the age of Kali is surrounded by his associates, servants, and confidential companions. So in the Gaudiya tradition, it is said that all of these personalities are actually incarnations of great beings, or other attributes of the Lord, or associates of the Lord, etc. But this is all known after the fact, or this is all known very confidentially. So people, this is the thing that I want to stress strongly. It's not like everybody at the time of Mahaprabhu just took this easily and accepted unanimously. Oh yes, of course. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. Lord Nityananda is Balarama himself. The associates around him, the Panchatattva, known as the remaining associates, as I mentioned, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhara Pandit, Srivasacharya, and then the Goswamis of Vrindavan, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Raghunatha Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, etc. So these are also considered to be great associates in the Ras Leela, in the Krishna Leela. So they are Manjaris, they are the servants of Radharani, for example. But this was not known or universally accepted at the time. This was confidentially revealed to those who were the disciples and close associates to those persons. And then based on the faith of their convictions in the divinity of those people, of their own life experiences, they chose to believe these testimonies. Or certain people received a direct vision from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave, on rare occasions, darshans of his divine form, of his being Narayan, of his being Krishna. So he gave what we know as Shadbhuja Darshanam, which is that he appeared with 6 arms on 3 different occasions to 3 different persons. He appeared to Lord Nityananda the day after meeting him with 6 arms, holding the paraphernalia of Lord Vishnu. Then he appears with 6 arms to Sarvabhata, I forget his name, from Puri, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, sorry. So he was an Advaitin in Puri, and he was then revealed this Shadbhuja form, 6-armed form, in which he no longer held the paraphernalia of Lord Vishnu. Instead, he had 2 arms holding the items of Lord Rama, a bow and an arrow. He had 2 arms of Krishna, holding a cowherder's stick and a flute, and then 2 arms of sannyas, the sannyas stage of Chaitanya's life, in which he was holding a kamandalu and a danda. So there you see already that this is very confidential darshan to one person, and that one person had this conversion and then gave testimony to this vision. And then again, Mahaprabhu did this for the king of Puri at a later date with the very same vision. So these are very, very specific events to individuals, and these are now accepted as perfectly true testimonies, but frankly, they were seen by one person. Yeah. So this is very similar to Gurudev, because Guruji himself has also given darshan to certain people of his true form. He has also performed great, miraculous activities that have revealed his true nature, but he does so privately to individuals. It's not common knowledge. This is not commonly understood and accepted in the wider community, or even in the wider Vaishnava community, if we want to go that far. And also Guruji has spoken about his associates. If you read Just Love books, he talks about that around him are not normal people. So actually the devas are there, the associates are there, all the personalities of Vaikuntha are there. But people don't know. And neither should they know, because this is confidential information, as the verse even says, his confidential companion. So it is for them to know. Why should somebody else know if the Lord doesn't want them to know? And so what I'm pointing out with all of this is that at the time of Mahaprabhu, this was all not common knowledge. But after the fact, because of the fantastic work of his disciples, who with full conviction and faith preached the truth of these testimonies, preached their experience, preached what they had believed, the conviction of their faith, and they wrote about it. They wrote commentaries and books. As the time has now passed, these things have been solidified as if they were just given facts, common knowledge that everybody accepted, but this is not the case. Mahaprabhu himself had contemporaries at the time who chose to start their own sampradayas rather than following him. He had traveled through South India, preaching to the Sri Vaishnavas, meeting the Sri Vaishnavas, and at the time, yes, he did gain disciples from them, including Gopal Bhatta Goswami, one of his Goswamis. But why is Gopal Bhatta Goswami famous? Because this is one convert, a major convert, but that's the point. There were not hundreds or thousands of converts. No, they met him, they saw him, they interacted with him, they listened to him, and yet they remained Sri Vaishnavas, following their own teaching, their own philosophy, etc., etc. So it's not this fantastical notion that whoever he meets was immediately a converted person. Similarly to Guruji, he has also converts from other sampradayas who have seen something in him, divinity, who have been revealed certain truths, and they have come. But many who have met him also have not seen this, and have not accepted that Guruji is Swayam Bhagavan, that he is the Lord himself. As many didn't accept that it was Chaitanya's case either. And as we progress, we understand also that this role, this wonderful hidden Leela, right, the hidden avatar, in the fact that it is God, but doesn't openly say so, doesn't openly proclaim, doesn't behave in the way, like Krishna killing demons, or like Vamana becoming huge and taking steps over all of creation. No. The role has to be understood. The role has to be perceived properly. So Mahaprabhu is teaching to be a devotee. So Guruji is also teaching that. He's also worshipping. He is doing his japam. He is instructing on how to worship. He is behaving also to some degree like that, but he's also behaving like a guru, and at times transcending both, because we cannot be stuck on this and we cannot be bound to this. And this is very, very important. And then comes, of course, the wonderful comparison, one that is very close to me in my field of seva, which is the Sampradaya topic. And so Mahaprabhu, he took mantra diksha, he took, like, let's say, theological diksha from Ishwarapuri, who was himself a devotee of the Madhava Sampradaya. And having taken initiation from him, did Mahaprabhu follow the precepts, the teachings, the philosophy and theology of the Madhva Sampradaya? No, he did not. He made his own. Based on the previous teachings of Acharyas? No. He had worked on the foundations that they had set, sure, but he spoke based on his own authority, on his own vision of truth, given that he was God himself. Why should God lean on the authority of anyone else, even on the authority of Shastra? Yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by all accounts that we have, propagated Shastra. That much can be said, for sure. But not as a means of proving what he himself was revealing and saying, but rather as a complementary, non-contradictory support, which is very much what Guruji does too. Guruji was personally initiated into the Sri Sampradaya by Bhattarangaraj Acharya, the same way Mahaprabhu was initiated by Ishwarapuri. Did Guruji follow all the precepts of Sri Vaishnavism? No, he did not. Did he build upon that base and speak on his own convictions and own realizations? Yes, he did. So the same. And then Mahaprabhu took sannyas initiation from Keshav Bharati, who was an Advaitin guru. He was an Advaitin sannyas from the Shankara line, who the followers of Chaitanya are massively opposed to, who Chaitanya himself spoke against the philosophy of Shankaracharya. Guruji took sannyas from Mahavtar Babaji, who we know to be a transcendental figure, not confined to any philosophy or any, box somebody tries to put him in, but at the same time, mostly he is conceived of by the world as being a yogi, an Advaitin, not necessarily a Vaishnava and a Bhakta, right? That's not the conception of him. So another similarity there. And he himself, Mahaprabhu, was not a prolific writer of any sort. He wrote the Shikshashtakam, which were 8 verses, and he instructed his disciples, the Goswamis, to actually write down the teaching and the philosophy and theology that would formalize the Gaudiya Sampradaya, stemming from Mahaprabhu. So we have the Hari Bhakta Sampradaya, and Guruji has also not so far chosen to write anything about it, but rather he has asked certain devotees to write the Siddhantas and conclusions of those teachings in that Sampradaya on his behalf. Same way Chaitanya asked the Goswamis. So there's another parallel. And so I find it very, very important for us to position them properly. We believe in Bhakti Marga that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Lord Nityananda, they are the divine incarnations of Krishna and Balarama, of Narayana and Adishesha. No problem. We believe it on the basis of Guruji's testimony. Those who were the disciples of Chaitanya, who were touched by him, who met him, who had the association of him in close proximity, etc., they also came to believe. And they had such strength in faith and strength in conviction that they preached strongly, they wrote, they gave testimony. And by the grace of the Lord, by the will of the Lord, this mission spread far, far and wide, to the point that today there are millions of Gaudiya Vaishnavas around the world who all have the unquestioned belief that Mahaprabhu, despite having never met him, was the Lord himself, without a shadow of a doubt. And all those around him were these intimate associates, Manjaris of Radharani herself, Lord Shiva and others were all around him. The various paraphernalia of Krishna, they were all manifest. Even Keshav Bharati, the Advaitin who gave sannyasa diksha to Mahaprabhu, he is considered by the followers of Mahaprabhu to be the reincarnation of Sandipani, the guru of Krishna. So you see how far it goes. And this was all believed. Today, we have many people also who know about certain personalities around Guruji, certain incarnations, this and that. But this is not talked about. It is not openly discussed, because what is the purpose? There is no purpose. And whether people will believe or not in the years to come will depend on 2 things. It will all depend on the grace of Guruji, the will of Guruji, as it did on Mahaprabhu's grace and will, and on the conviction and desire to serve of the devotees, as it did in the case of Mahaprabhu. The Goswamis were exemplary. They wrote comprehensive literature, powerful literature, compelling literature. They preached. They lived exemplary lives, and they worked. They built temples. They built ashrams. They propagated in a practical sense, not only in a theoretical sense, in the sense that they made sadhaks, they made practitioners, they made people not only understand the philosophy, but practice the path, the methodology. And so we hear in the verse of the Bhagavatam that we recited today that it's about congregational chanting, the Sankirtana movement, that the Yuga Dharma, the Dharma for this age, the most appropriate Dharma is to chant the names of the Lord, and to do so in congregation, not alone but together, and to do it in the worship of the Lord, to do this as a worship, as a form of adoration. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu certainly did this. He certainly propagated that, and his disciples they continued that with strong conviction. And so this is a very, very important thing. When you study, one of the best things, I tell you this sincerely, one of the things that best has helped me on my path to understand Gurudev and whatever is going on right now in Bhakti Marga, the last 15 years, the movement and life of Guruji, which is history in the making, literally, was to understand the life of Mahaprabhu. The more I read about it, the more I understood, the more I could relate myself to that, and the more we tried to position things and actually try to see things how they were then. not necessarily taking all the amazingly fantastical divine conclusions that are now presented about what was, but rather understand the reality at the time, which was very different. A lot of secrecy and hidden and revelation and ambiguous claims and all kinds of things. And that echoes and I see a great parallel to the life that Guruji has lived so far. But we have to also therefore see a parallel between us. If we see such a wonderful parallel, let's put it like this, between Guruji and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which I do, then we must also try to see a parallel between Guruji's disciples, devotees, followers, and those of Mahaprabhu. Because they had a clear mentality, many of them, of service, dedication that was unmatched. Seva, to propagate, to establish, to grow, to touch people's hearts with the love of Mahaprabhu, that we should be of the exact same opinion when it comes to Guruji, that we should have the same spirit. Because the reason Mahaprabhu is who he is today, as I said, is through his grace carried forth by his disciples. And so similarly, we should have from our side all that can be done, which is the right mindset. And the grace will have to flow from Guruji as per his wishes and will, always. We are completely subjected to his will. We are striving to be completely surrendered to his will. And that is beyond dispute and super important. But we have to also have the aim. We also have to have the desire to affect that, the parts inside of us that we can affect, the mentality, the behavior, the reactions, the sadhana, all of the things that are necessary to carry that message in the most authentic and powerful way possible, with the right ambition, with the right vision of what is to be done. And so, like I said, I think that there is a lot that we can take from the life of Mahaprabhu, from the life of Mahaprabhu's devotees and disciples, and be inspired. And inspiration is the key, because Guruji, although we have Gaura Nitai in the temple and they are, revered and worshipped, you will note that, for example, he has never given Gaura Nitai as Ishtadev. In fact, there's a funny story. Back in 2009, I asked Guruji who my Ishtadev is. Or was it 2008? I don't remember now. And he said, who do you think it is? And I said, it's either Narsinghadev or it's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he sort of laughed and he said, no, you can't have Chaitanya as Ishtadev. It is Narsinghadev. That's what he said, right? But why I said that? Because at the time, I had such a love for him, for Chaitanya, because I could see that was who was standing in front of me. I could feel it. Guruji at that time, it was incredible. He would regularly go into trance when singing Kirtan. He would be doing exactly what is described in the Bhagavatam verse, congregational chanting. We would all be chanting around him, and he would get so ecstatic, so full of bhav, that Guruji would literally faint. He would collapse to the ground in bhava. And this would happen often in those years, often. And then it stopped. And there are reasons for that, and maybe another time we can discuss that. But this is the thing. So Mahaprabhu is not given as an Ishtadev. He is not overly emphasized. We don't study Chaitanya Charitamrita. We don't study Achintya Bheda Abheda, which is the philosophy institutionalized by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We don't study the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. We don't study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami, the teachings of the Goswamis. We don't. And yet we have their paintings in our temple. And yet we have their deities in our temple. So how to understand this? That we are not studying their teaching, yet we are worshipping and venerating them and giving our respects to them. It's because they are the parallel of what is going on now. We don't need to study their teaching because Guruji is giving his teaching now and we have to propagate it. But they are role models. They are Guruji before Guruji, in a sense. Mahaprabhu is Guruji 500 years ago, doing it in a different time and setting, but doing the same thing, spreading prem. The gift Mahaprabhu gave to the world was prema bhakti for Krishna. Guruji is doing the same in a different context, in a different time, in a different way, because the world has changed. But we have to take the inspiration, we have to take the reference, and with the same vigor, with the same conviction, do what needs to be done now. Make that grace flow to all who are ready to receive it. And that is why Gaura Purnima is a reinvigorating inspiration for me every year. Not to look back to the past and not to study what was, but to learn to observe, see the parallels, and act out right now in the present moment in the better way than we have done, in always an improving manner, improving attitude, improving devotion, improving faith, improving service, etc. And that is the message that I wanted to give on Gaura Purnima. See the parallel between Guruji and Mahaprabhu and the wonders of that. The more you read, if you choose to read the life of Mahaprabhu Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishnadasa Kaviraj, you will see, and it's wonderful. But as I said, then we should also, if we do that, we should also then see the life of the Goswamis and the remaining members of the Panchatattva, and also see that should also be as equally read and understood and marveled at and emulated. We should emulate that behavior because we are to Guruji what they were to Mahaprabhu. So we cannot glorify Mahaprabhu and say how wonderful it is, his example and teaching, and then dismiss the disciples and say, oh yeah, but that's something else. We should do actually both. And that is the right way to go about it. And there's plenty more to talk about Mahaprabhu. I had the same difficulty the other day. I was giving a Q&A on Mahaprabhu, and it was so difficult to keep it within the time constraints. So not to make this exceedingly long, we'll leave it here for today. Happy Gaura Purnima, happy Holi, and Jai Gurudev.
Shiva Sari Krishna Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Radhe Vrajavana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Radhe Vrajavana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Radhe Vrajavana Mana Sukakari Makara Krita Kundala Kalavajanti Mala Makara Krita Kundala Kalavajanti Mala Mora Mukutta Makara Krita Kundala Kalavajanti Mala Sham Sham Sarananpura Rasana Radhe Sham 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 Shri Radhe Sarananpura Rasana Radhe Sham 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 Sarananpura Rasana Radhe Sham 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 Radhe Sham, 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 Radhe Sham. Vrajajana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Radhe Vrajajana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Sundara Varana Kamala Dala Lochana Baki Chitavana Hari Sundara Varana Kamala Dala Lochana Sundara Varana Kamala Dalochana Baki Chitavana Sundara Varana Kamala Dalochana Baki Chitavana Mohana Vansi Vihari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Mohana Vansi Vihari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Mohana Vansi Vihari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Mohana Vansi Vihari Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Sham, 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 Radhe Sham. Vrajajana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Radhe Vrajajana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Shri Radhe Vrajajana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Radhe Vrajajana Mana Sukakari Radhe Sham 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 Oh Radhe Sham, 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 Radha Jana Manasukakari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Raja Jana Manasukakari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Raja Jana Manasukakari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Raja Jana Manasukakari Radhe Shama 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 Vrindavan mein den charave gopi jana manari 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 Shama Shama Shri Govardhan Dhari Radhe Shama 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 Shri Radhe Shri Govardhan Dhari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Shri Govardhan Dhari Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Oh Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Oh Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Oh Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Raja Jana Manasukakari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Raja Jana Manasukakari Radhe Shama 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 Radha Krishna Mili Avato Gaura Rupa Avatari Radha Krishna Mili Avato Gaura Rupa Avatari Radha Krishna Mili Avato Gaura Rupa Avatari Radha Krishna Mili Avato Kirtana Dharma Prachari Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Kirtana Dharma Prachari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Kirtana Dharma Prachari Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Kirtana Dharma Prachari Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Shama 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 Oh Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Oh Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Radhe Shama Oh Radhe Shama 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 Krishna Radhe Shri Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki Satguru Swami Vishwananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Radhe Bhajo mana Shri Vrindavan Dham Shri Vrindavan Dham Bhajo mana Shri Vrindavan Dham Shri Vrindavan Dham Bhajo mana Shri Vrindavan Dham Shri Vrindavan Dham Bhajo mana Shri Vrindavan Dham Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Vrindavan Dham Bhajo mana Shri Vrindavan Dham Shri Vrindavan Dham Bhajo mana Shri Vrindavan Dham Shri Vrindavan Dham Bhajo mana Shri Vrindavan Dham Bolo Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Krishna 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 मेरे दिल ललते है राधे राधे गोविंदा राधे 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 गोविंदा राधे 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 गोविंदा राधे 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 गोविंदा राधे बोलो राधे Radha. Bolo Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Radhe 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 Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Narayan Lakshmi Narayan Lakshmi Narayan 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 Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe Sham 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 Narayan Lakshmi Narayan Lakshmi Narayan 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 Bolo Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Radhe
Hare the greatest gift from the world above. Shri Krishna said that those who chant his name will always be part of this greater love. Open your heart, embrace the name. Take this unique chant, sing your heart out, and this will make him dance. Now, raise your hands up to the sky. Take the grace of Hari Nam and cry out Hari Bol.
Shri Radha
Shyam Radhe, Radhe Shyam Radhe, Radhe Shyam Radhe, Radhe Shyam Bhajo Guru Vishwananda, Shri Giridhari, Lakshmi Narayana, Narasimha Deva, Bhajo Guru Vishwananda,
not just the son of Yashoda. There's others here who love you. You are our friend. You are our eternal companion.
Vasudeva sutam evam kamsacharunamardhanam Devaki paramanandam Krishna vande jagadguru Krishna vande jagadguru Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Oh Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Bolo Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala 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 Oh Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Krishna Krishna Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Oh Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala 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 Kararavindana Padaravindam Mukharavindam Niveshayantam Kararavindam Padaravindam Mukharavindam Niveshayantam Vatasya Patrasya Putteshayanam Balamukunda Manasasmarami 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 Balamukunda Manasasmarami Balamukunda Manasasmarami Balamukunda Manasasmarami Balamukunda Manasasmarami Balamukunda Manasasmarami Manasa Smarami Bala Mukundam Manasa Smarami Bala Mukundam Manasa Smarami Bala Mukundam Manasa Smarami Bolo Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala 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 Krishna Krishna Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Oh Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Padaravindam Mukharavindam Vivesayantam Nararavindam Nararavindam Mukharavindam Vivesayantam Patrasya Patrasya Pudeshayanam Balam Mukundam Manasasmarami Patrasya Patrasya Pudeshayanam Balam Mukundam Manasasmarami Balamukundam 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 Manasasmarami Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala 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 Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna Manasa Smarami Balamukundam Manasa Smarami Balamukundam Manasa Smarami Bolo Balamukundam Manasa Smarami Balamukundam Manasa Smarami Balamukundam Manasa Smarami Balamukundam Manasa Smarami Krishna 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 Govinda Krishna 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 Gopala Radha Krishna Kanaya Lal Ki Jai.
Bhutaphrteshwarnath
baje, paga pancha baje. Maya Shoda ji, Maya Shoda ji, Maya Shoda ji leve baleya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Hey, choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Krishna bansi baje, Radha Gauri nache. 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 Wo to murli, wo to murli, wo to murli pe mohi kareya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Hey, choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Indra varsha kare, Indra varsha kare, Krishna raksha kare. 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 Wo to khud hi, wo to khud hi, wo to khud hi leela racheya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Hey, choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Brij dama ko deno chareya, wo to pan pan nagar nacheya. Brij dama ko deno chareya, wo to pan pan nagar nacheya. Oh choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Makan chori kare, chora chori kare. 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 Gopiyan ki jai ho, gopiyan ki jai ho, gopiyan ki maat ki bhodeya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Jai brij mein umang khile balon ke sang, jai brij mein umang khile balon ke sang, jai brij mein umang khile balon ke sang, jai brij mein umang khile balon ke sang. Radha Rani, Radha Rani, Radha Rani sang rasa racheya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Hey, choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Choto choto so Krishna Kanhaiya, pyaro pyaro so bansi bajeya. Mate mukut saje, paga panjan baje. Mate mukut छोटो छोटो सो कृष्ण कन्हैया प्यारो प्यारो सो बंसी बजैया कृष्ण बंसी बजे राधा गोरी नचे 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 वो तो मुरली जय हो वो तो मुरली जय हो वो तो मुरली
Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatindraya Karuna Karaya Mangala Mangala Me Yatindraya Karuna Karaya Mangala Mangala Me Prapati Dharme Karataya Mangala Mangala Me Prapati Dharme Karataya Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatindraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Saligrama Pratishtitaya Mangala Mangala Me Saligrama Pratishtitaya Mangala Mangala Me Tridanda Darine Goda Grajaya Mangala Mangala Me Tridanda Darine Goda Grajaya Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Angesa Kenkajerataya Mangala Mangala Me Angesa Kenkajerataya Mangala Mangala Me Mananataya Darini Daraya Mangala Mangala Me Mananataya Darini Daraya Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Mangala Mangala Me Mangala Mangala Me Mangala Mangala Me Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Jaya Jagadish Hare Bhakta Janon ke sankat das Janon ke sankat Sharana me dura kare Om Jai Jagadish Hare Joy Jave Palapade Dukha Bina Se Manaka Swami Dukha Bina Se Manaka Sukha Sampati Gara Ave Sukha Sampati Gara Ave Kashta Bite Tanaka Om Jaya Jagadish Mata Pita Tuma Mere Sharana Graho Meti Saki Swami Sharana Graho Meti Saki Tuma Bina Ora Na Doja Tuma Bina Ora Na Doja Asha Karo Meti Saki Om Jai Jagadish Hare Tuma Purana Paramatma Swami Tumakarayami Parabrahma Parameshwara Parabrahma Parameshwara Tuma Sabke Swami Om Jaya Jagadish Hare Tuma Karuna Ke Sagar Tuma Palana Karata Swami Tuma Palana Karata Me Seva Katuma Swami Me Seva Katuma Swami Kripa Karo Bharata Om Jai Jagadish Hare Tuma ho eka ghosh Sabke Pranapati Swami Sabke Pranapati Kisa Vidhi Milu Dayaman Kisa Vidhi Milu Dvipama Tuma Kome Kumati Om Jai Jagadish Hare Dina Bandhu Dukharata Tuma Rakshaka Mere Swami Tuma Rakshaka Mere Karuna Tabhadao Karuna Tabhadao Charana Pada Tere Om Jai Jagadish Hare Vishaya Vikara Mitao Paparo Deva Swami Paparo Deva Shraddha Bhakti Badhao Shraddha Prema Badhao Sanatana Ke Seva Om Jaya Jagadish Tana Mana Dana Sabda Hai Tera Swami Sabha Kuch Hai Tera Swami Sabha Kuch Hai Tera Tera Tujhko Arpana Tera Tujhko Arpana Kya lage mera Om Jaya Jagadish Hare Om Jaya Jagadish Hare Swami Jaya Jagadish Hare Bhakta Jano Ke Sankat Dasa Jano Ke Sankat Charana Mein Dura Kare Om Jai Jagadish Hare Om Karara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Mane Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Chakarara Ko Chakarara Ko Chakarara Koji Chakarara Ko Chakarara Ko Chakarara Koji Mane Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Shama Mane Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Govinda Mane Chakarara Koji Giridhari Lala Chakarara Koji Mata Chapita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya Shanti 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 Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Prem se bol Shri Lakshmi Narayana Bhagavan ki Shri Bhutabhrteshwarnath Simha Bhagavan ki Krishna Kanayalal ki Shri Mahavata Kriyavalaji ki Shri Ramanujacharya ki Prem se bolo Satguru Deva Shri Swami Vishwananda Mahaprabhu ki Om Krishna Yago युक्ति ज्वाला परिका सर्वाधिक शोभना होता परस्मै परब्रह्मणे ब्रह्मज्योतिषे स्वाहा ओम पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं ओम शांति 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 निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे श्याम रमण